I'll try that again with my audio on. Good afternoon.
Good
Good afternoon.
afternoon.
How is everybody today?
Good.
Good. Hey, if you're in AP, will you please go to the course blog at some point this afternoon? Dr. Martinez and the admin team are really wanting to make sure that everybody's got what they need to take the exam. And the last time I asked about this was about a month ago. So if anybody has any issues with devices or internet access, I just want to know so that she or whoever at the school can help you take care of it. Okay.
Okay. Wait, Mr. Preston, and if we don't have to respond, right? Or do you still want us to respond saying that we don't?
You know, it would help me just so I don't have to keep track. If you wouldn't mind just saying, yep, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
That would help. I guess I don't want anybody to slip through the cracks. I also don't want you to get unnecessary phone calls and visits if you don't need to.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. So we're headed home this next couple of days. We're going to finish the book. And I've been thinking a lot about the end game for the school year. You know, I know that a lot of people are dealing with less than perfect, to say the least, situations. I know that the district grading policy has given some people the idea that they're sort of like off the reservation. And this is usually the time of year when the class starts to turn into a master class taught by you. Now, obviously, because of the way things have gone this last month, I haven't really put any emphasis on the big questions. And so what I thought I would do is use myself as a guinea pig. And I'm rolling this out as an idea. So since you're the people who are showing up, I'm wondering if you can help me decide whether it's a good idea. Because we haven't had all the dedicated time for people to really explore and go into depth with their big questions, and I'm pretty sure that people aren't really doing that on their own, it occurred to me to do like a little mini something. Now, you guys know that I went over winter break to Utah and I trained with a gorilla named Bobby Maximus, who is willing to go online with us. And what I thought I would do is sort of model this by writing up my own process and what I did and how I learned and what I got out of it, and post that, and then kind of break down the elements that make it meaningful, both for me and for the readers, and then invite you guys to do likewise. So that would mean either your current big question or something else you're interested in, finding at least one person who knows more than you do, getting some online or in-person coaching if that's possible, and then sharing the experience in a way that shows how you've grown as a result. And I would use that as a way to wrap up the class and give us a final project that I'm hoping A, would be valuable for you, and B, would be meaningful to put on your blogs as something that people who want to get to know you as a thinker would benefit from. So I'm wondering how that sounds to you. Would it be helpful for me to guinea pig this and show you that model? Just any feedback would be appreciated. I'm kind of wondering what you think.
I mean, I think it would be a good idea, but when you mean like write back like what we like learned from whatever interview that we do, like on our course blogs, is that what you mean? Like write about like what we learned?
Yeah.
There? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So if I treat the course blog as sort of my first version of this, basically what I'm going to do is put up my story about how I got to know Bobby, what I hope to learn from him, pictures of us together in Utah, what he taught me, what I've taken from it since, and literally just share that in words, videos, and pictures as my final project to you. And then asking you all to reciprocate and do that back to me. I mean, we could always do another book. We could do a lot of different things. I mean, we have so many things that I had planned for us this year that got kind of blown up by the school closure. So we've got a lot of things to choose from, but I was really kind of looking for a way to salvage at least some of the big question work that I promised you, because that's all about you and your choices. So I thought this might be a way to do it. So what do you guys think?
Well, like Deanna said, I think it's a good idea because, I mean, there's a lot of people that took in a lot of time and effort in their big question, and I think it'd be kind of sad just to blow it over.
Yeah, I did too. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll be the brave one and I'll go first. And then as we finish Fahrenheit 451, I'm actually kind of transitioning into that anyway, because I posted an essay that I wrote about Fahrenheit 451 that we're going to talk about as a model for how you can approach your essay, both for the book and the AP exam, for those of you who are taking it. And look, I'm over 50 and I'm the teacher, and it's still a little bit like, okay, I'm going to show you mine. I hope it doesn't suck, but give me your feedback, because that's how we grow. And then I'll do the same thing with that blog post, and we'll see where it leads us. And in the meantime, if people are showing up at least once in a while and posting, then as far as the grades and all that stuff, you've got nothing to worry about. But I love the opportunity to continue something that's meaningful for you and will help you even through all of this interestingness we're living through. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Is anything else going on that you have questions about or that I need to know about before we get started into the reading?
Oh, I just have a quick question. Will ours, because like recently with like other classes, I heard like the admin had like sent out a schedule about when classes, like they're like, oh, science classes have to do it at this time on this day, and then like other classes. So like my physics or my history class, like it changed from being on like Mondays and Fridays to being on Tuesdays and like Thursdays. Like, will that happen with this class or?
No.
Okay. Because like I'm just wondering like for others who have like conflicting like schedules too. Because like my other friends, like they say they have English and like one of them has Spanish at the same time.
Yeah, Odalise sent me an email this morning about that.
Yeah.
You know, gosh, so this is recording. I know it's going to be on the course blog. I'm really going to try and be diplomatic about this because I care about everybody and I realize that everyone's doing the best they can. But the very first week after the campus closed, I sent an email to the entire faculty and administration saying, this is going to be really stressful for a lot of people. So one of the things we can do to lessen that is organize ourselves so that students don't have to manage conflicts in their schedules. Swear to God. And I put up a spreadsheet, a sheet on Google Docs, so that the entire faculty could plug in which times they wanted, day and week, so that we wouldn't have that problem. And I went first, and I put in 1 o'clock daily and 2 o'clock on Fridays for the AP. I don't know what happened since, and I didn't know about that message that you're describing until Odalise sent me that email this morning. So I don't know how to address that really, because so many people know that this is the time for this class, and it has been now for, what is this, our 6th or 7th week? Mm-hmm. So what I think I'm going to do is this. I'm never going to penalize someone for not being on the live Zoom meeting anyway, and the recordings are going to go up on the course blog. And I'm always available if someone has a question, you know, after the meeting or after hours or whatever. So we're going to continue at this time. And if someone has a pressing issue with another teacher, go have that meeting so that you're not trying to be in 2 places at once or feeling stressed about it. And just catch up with this on the recording when you can. And then if you have any questions or want to talk with me, if I can't solve it via email, I'll just set up a one-to-one Zoom with you and we'll work it out. How does that, does that work for you?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. So what's the deal with these guys at the fire? Montag shows up. There's a campfire. There's a bit of a conversation. How would you summarize that? They're lumberjacks with no education, and they can't wait to cook Montag and eat him.
No.
I would say they're kind of like the old souls of the society. Like they're called the Wanderers for a reason. They're kind of there just hidden, and they're the ones that read all the books, that have all the old knowledge. So he kind of just bumps into like what he kind of wants to be now.
Yeah. Wow, Destiny, you put that really well. Old souls. So these are the keepers of the history of the ideas, the feelings, the philosophies that Montag was seeking when he first started wanting to read books in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And now they're telling him that the best place to keep all of this isn't really on the bookcase, it's in here. And they've actually memorized books, and they are walking versions of Plato's Republic or Marcus Aurelius or Shakespeare. So where we left off, he said, we are also Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So they've also memorized the Bible. Everyone laughed quietly. It can't be, said Montag. It is, replied Granger, smiling. We're book burners too. We read the books and burnt them, afraid they'd be found. Microfilming didn't pay off. We were always traveling. We didn't want to bury the film and come back later. Always the chance of discovery. Better to keep it in the old heads where no one can see it or suspect it. We are all bits and pieces of history and literature and international law. Byron, Tom Paine, Machiavelli, or Christ, it's here. And the hour's late, and the war's begun. And we are out here, and the city is there, all wrapped up in its own coat of 1,000 colors. Does anyone know what that's an allusion to, by the way? There's a reason that I reread that paragraph. All wrapped up in its own coat of 1,000 colors. Does anyone recognize a story, an ancient story that involves a coat of many colors? From the Bible, Joseph. So the author, even in that dialogue, Ray Bradbury is giving us an allusion to something. There's a little hidden nugget here and there throughout the book. What do you think, Montag? I think I was blind, trying to go at things my way, planting books in firemen's houses and sending in alarms. You did what you had to do. Carried out on a national scale, it might have worked beautifully, but our way is simpler and we think better. All we want to do is keep the knowledge we think we will need intact and safe. We're not out to incite or anger anyone yet. For if we are destroyed, the knowledge is dead, perhaps for good. We are model citizens in our own special way. We walk the old tracks. We lie in the hills at night, and the people let us be. We walk the old tracks. That goes right with what Destiny said. What a great metaphor. We're stopped and searched occasionally, but there's nothing on our persons to incriminate us. The organization is flexible, very loose and fragmentary. Some of us have had plastic surgery on our faces and fingerprints. Right now, we have a horrible job. We're waiting for the war to begin and as quickly end. It's not pleasant, but then we're not in control. We're the odd minority crying in the wilderness. When the war's over, perhaps we can be of some use in the world. Do you really think they'll listen then? If not, we'll just have to wait. We'll pass the books on to our children by word of mouth and let our children wait in turn on the other people. A lot will be lost that way, of course, but you can't make people listen. They have to come round in their own time, wondering what happened and why the world blew up under them. It can't last. How many of you are there? Thousands on the road, the abandoned rail tracks tonight, bums on the outside, libraries inside. It wasn't planned at first. Each man had a book he wanted to remember and did. Then, over a period of 20 years or so, we met each other, traveling, and got the loose network together and set out a plan. The most important single thing we had to pound into ourselves is that we were not important. We mustn't be pedants. Pedant is a word we don't really use frequently. Does anyone know what that means or recognize it? To be pedantic? Have you ever had a teacher who just goes on and takes themselves so seriously and makes you wonder like what the point is?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a pedant. Okay. So what these guys don't want to do is be so full of themselves. I mean, you can have the most interesting information in the world, but if you come across that way, you're going to turn people off and they're going to shut down. Not Destiny, of course. I'm sure that you paid close attention even still, right?
Yes.
We were not to feel superior to anyone else in the world. We're nothing more than dust jackets for books, of no significance otherwise. Some of us live in small towns. Chapter 1 of Thoreau's Walden and Green River. Chapter 2 in Willow Farm, Maine. Why, there's one town in Maryland, only 27 people. No bomb will ever touch that town. Is the complete essays of a man named Bertrand Russell. Pick up that town almost and flip the pages. So many pages to a person. And when the war's over, someday, some year, the books can be written again. The people will be called in one by one to recite what they know, and we'll set it up in type until another dark age, when we might have to do the whole damn thing over again. But that's the wonderful thing about man. he never gets so discouraged or disgusted that he gives up doing it all over again, because he knows very well it is important and worth the doing. What do we do tonight? Asked Montag. Wait, said Granger, and moved downstream a little ways just in case. He began throwing dust and dirt in the fire. The other men helped, and Montag helped, and there in the wilderness the men all moved their hands, putting out the fire together. Now here again we have the image of hands. But do you see how it's changed? Montag in the beginning was looking at his hands like they were some foreign animal doing strange things without his permission. And now not only is he in alignment, integrated in his integrity, but he's also with people who are cooperating instead of working separately on their own or worse, against each other. They stood by the river in the starlight. Montag saw the luminous dial of his waterproof. 5 o'clock in the morning. Another year ticked by in a single hour, and dawn waiting beyond the far bank of the river. Why do you trust me? Said Montag. A man moved in the darkness. The look of you's enough. You haven't seen yourself in a mirror lately. Beyond that, the city has never cared so much about us to bother with an elaborate chase like this to find us. A few crackpots with verses in their heads can't touch them, and they know it, and we know it. Everyone knows it. So long as the vast population doesn't wander about quoting the Magna Carta and the Constitution, it's all right. The firemen were enough to check that now and then. No, the cities don't bother us, and you look like hell. So, you know that old cliche that everybody talks about in book reports, you can't tell the book by its cover, right? Montag does not look like a guy who's holding a secret. And when you think about it, that's true for all of us. Like me walking down the street, I'm sure that whatever people think of me when they see me, they're not imagining that I might hold the poem of Richard Cory in my head. You know, whenever people walk downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman, and I could go on, but they don't know that. Or Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy, or 1,000 other things. Each of you has all of these secrets locked up that only you know, and sometimes you don't even remember that you know. And what's interesting about people is, just like the books on the shelf behind me, all of us have libraries of information inside of us. I love the way that Ray Bradbury made that point. They moved along the bank of the river going south. Montag tried to see the men's faces, the old faces he remembered from the firelight, lined and tired. He was looking for a brightness, a resolve, a triumph over tomorrow that hardly seemed to be there. Perhaps he had expected their faces to burn and glitter with the knowledge they carried, to glow as lanterns glow with the light in them. But all the light had come from the campfire, and these men had seemed no different than any others who had run a long race, searched a long search, seen good things destroyed, and now, very late, were gathered to wait for the end of the party and the blowing out of the lamps. They weren't at all certain that the things they carried in their heads might make every future dawn glow with a purer light. They were sure of nothing, save that the books were on file behind their quiet eyes. The books were waiting, with their pages uncut, for the customers who might come by in later years, some with clean and some with dirty fingers. Montag squinted from one face to another as they walked. Oh, here we go. Don't judge a book by its cover, someone said, and they all laughed quietly, moving downstream. There was a shriek, and the jets from the city were gone overhead long before the men looked up. Montag stared back at the city, far down the river, only a faint glow now. My wife's back there. I'm sorry to hear that. The cities won't do well in the next few days, said Granger. Oh, I gotta unstick my pages here. It's strange. I don't miss her. It's strange I don't feel much of anything, said Montag. Even if she dies, I realized a moment ago, I don't think I'll feel sad. It isn't right. Something must be wrong with me. Listen, said Granger, taking his arm and walking with him, holding aside the bushes to let him pass. When I was a boy, my grandfather died, and he was a sculptor. Now, as I read this passage, think back again to the imagery of hands and what they can build and what they can destroy, and ask, well, think of that and we'll hold that image and then we'll come back to this paragraph. He was also a very kind man who had a lot of love to give the world, and he helped clean up the slum in our town, and he made toys for us, and he did a million things in his lifetime. He was always busy with his hands. And when he died, I suddenly realized I wasn't crying for him at all, but for all the things he did. I cried because he would never do them again. He would never carve another piece of wood, or help us raise doves and pigeons in the backyard, or play the violin the way he did, or tell us jokes the way he did. He was part of us, and when he died, all the actions stopped dead, and there was no one to do them just the way he did. He was individual. He was an important man. I've never gotten over his death. Often I think, what wonderful carvings never came to birth because he died? How many jokes are missing from the world? And how many homing pigeons untouched by his hands? He shaped the world. He did things to the world. The world was bankrupted of 10 million fine actions the night he passed on. So, what was the significance of making and doing in hands in that passage? How did that contribute to the way Granger felt about his grandfather?
I think kind of like what he was like showing was like how our actions, like what we do, is like important because like that's what people remember us by. Like they don't really remember like, oh, like I don't know, like I feel like that's what like we leave legacies behind by things that we do, like especially like with loved ones like who have passed away. Like we remember them like by like, oh, remember when they used to do that, remember when they used to do this, which is very similar to what Granger was talking about. And I think that's kind of like the imagery of like hands too, is like throughout the passage, like Montag has been like represented or like seen as like some evil kind of person because he was burning books, or like incompassionate because he was doing that. But now as he's evolving, like his image, like his mind and like his personality, like that image of what he wants to leave behind is like changing.
Yeah, really well said, Deanna. I appreciate you saying that. Anybody else have any observations on that?
I agree with Diana because, as like she was saying, like when we die, like our actions will be the only one that people will know about us.
Mm-hmm.
Our actions will basically like shift, like not shift, but like will make people, um, will have people's impressions on what we've done.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting to think of that in terms, and I agree with what you said as well, Lena. You can think of that as a legacy, right? Because we normally think about older people and their body of work, you know, like their lifetime achievement award. What about you right now at this moment in your life? What are you known for? What do you do? You don't have to answer that right away, but isn't that a question worth thinking about?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll even like ask my friends like, "Oh, what do you think about me?" I don't know, they just really seem like they most of the answers that I would get is probably someone who's very hyper and very just out there and outgoing. And I guess I don't know, I guess I just seen that. I don't know.
Yeah. So part of the reason that we originally agreed to do a lot of our work online is because a lot of people rely on what they think of as, you know, statistical evidence to think about our intelligence. So that might look like test scores or grades. It might look like credits toward graduation. But it's really hard to know what someone's done because in most classes, in most schools, a teacher assigns something, a student does the work. It's only seen by one other person, usually the teacher. It gets graded, and then it gets crumpled up and lost in the bottom of a backpack for the rest of history. And part of the reason that I've been encouraging people in our class to continue sharing what they think and how they feel on their course blogs, whether it's in response to the book or just as a journal that documents this moment in history, is for this exact reason. Because you, each one of you, are a valuable person with a valuable story to tell. But the only way anyone will ever know is if you act and if your hands actually put those thoughts and feelings and ideas into words that others can understand. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much why I came back to teach. But that's also why, especially during this time, it's really interesting to me to read your blogs and to see who's doing what, because really, since we're not in the room together, that's what I know of you. And in a way, if you look at the course blog, that's what you know of me. So to wrap up the reading for today, Montag considers all of this, and this is a lot to consider. And he walked in silence. Millie, Millie, he whispered. Millie. What? My wife, my poor wife. Poor Millie, poor Millie. I can't remember anything. I think of her hands, but I don't see them doing anything at all. They just hang there at her sides, or they lie there on her lap, or there's a cigarette in them, but that's all. Montag turned and glanced back. What did you give to the city, Montag? Ashes. What did the others give to each other? Nothingness. Granger stood looking back at Montag. Everyone must leave something behind when he dies, my grandfather said. A child, or a book, or a painting, or a house, or a wall built, or a pair of shoes made, or a garden planted. Something your hand touched some way, so your soul has somewhere to go when you die. And when people look at that tree, or that flower that you planted, you're there. It doesn't matter what you do, he said, so long as you change something from the way it was before you touched it into something that's like you after you take your hands away. The difference between the man who just cuts lawns and a real gardener is in the touching, he said. The lawn cutter might just as well have not been there at all. The gardener will be there a lifetime. That's a good note to end on, because tomorrow the whole city gets destroyed.
Well, that's fun.
Does anybody have any closing comments or questions before we cut the meeting and I go I learn how to speak again before I post the course? Oh my gosh. Post whatever. Do the course blog. Does anybody have any parting thoughts?
The book kind of reminds me of the Hunger Games, about the whole city and the town.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it isn't like more action. It's mainly just like people dying in the city itself, being messed up and being in this whole world that people don't really know about.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me to think about how that inner conflict that Montag's had and how he's grown through that. So you have this like right up close and personal, but then in the background, you also have this bigger conflict that's sort of in the background, but it's becoming more important as we reach the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Anybody else?
Speaking of similarities to books, I don't know if you guys have ever read The Giver, but this is exactly like The Giver. Like, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Really good connection, Destiny. That's a good point.
Mr. Preston,
Yes.
for Friday on the AP meeting, are we supposed to have another essay prompt done?
Well, yeah, my hope was that, were you able to see the video of the essay structure that I had posted?
Is that the College Board one?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Okay. If you have a look at that one, what I'm going to use Friday for is to answer questions about the structure of the essays. And then I'm going to give one more practice essay, and we're going to talk, hopefully by Friday, I'll know more from the College Board about what they're actually going to ask for on the exam. I really haven't gotten clear on that, and I'm hoping to this week. So between the structure of the essay, which is in that video, and going over the kinds of questions that I'm hoping that we'll know to expect, that's what we're going to talk about on Friday.
Like, so we don't have any practice prompts to do right now that you posted on the blog?
I didn't post any additional ones, but I also, if you remember, since the beginning of the year, you've had almost all of the prompts that they've ever asked for this exam. And I'm here to read whenever you want to write. So anybody who wants to can tackle any prompt and send it to me in a Google Doc, and I'll edit it for you and make comments, and we can go back and forth about how to improve it.
Okay, thank you.
And if you want suggestions, go ahead and send me an email and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about this kind of an essay. I'm not really sure how to do this, and I'll tailor it for you. The silver lining of what's going on right now is that because I don't have period to period to period, I can be available for those kinds of conversations, and I'm happy to do that on an individual basis, because everybody's got different strengths and different things they need to work on.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great rest of the day. If you need anything, send me an email, and otherwise we'll be back here 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Bye, Mr.
Okay,
President.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.